Well, here we are. Welcome, everybody, to Thought Leader Friday with our great friend Steve Murray of Real Trends in Denver, Colorado. Debbie and I had a chance to spend some time with Steve at his Gathering of Eagles conference last year. And because of the great relationship between Debbie and Steve, he's been kind enough to come talk to us about market conditions that face real estate agents and brokerage firms. So I'm going to hand it to Debbie before we hand the floor over to Steve. So, hey, Debbie.
Hi guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in today. And if you're catching this on the recording, lots of great information I'm sure will be here today. First of all, thank you, Steve. Tremendous commitment for you for your time with all that's going on. So we appreciate you carving out the time to be with us. And I know you and I spoke about, you have a presentation put together for our viewers. And I would love for you to start with sharing a little bit about who is Steve and what is Real Trends for those viewers out there that aren't aware, but we'll just basically turn it over to you at this point. So thanks for being here today.
Debbie and Bill, it's an honor to be with you, and hopefully I'll share some information that will be helpful to someone who might be tuning in or who sees this later. So yeah, my name's Steve Murray. I'm president of Real Trends. We're in our 34th year as a trends and consulting firm. And this is my 44th year in the industry. Real Trends does a lot of research and publishing. You can go to realtrends.com. Virtually all of our content is free. Our monthly trends newsletter, our daily blogs, our podcasts, a video series called Lessons Learned of the last month or two seems to have been popular. We also hold CEO forums around the country. We have 8 different CEO forums that we work with on an ongoing basis. And we have a national conference, which Debbie and Bill were kind enough to come to last year, the Gathering of Eagles, which is for industry leaders. We also do consulting for brokerage companies mainly and teams on valuations, mergers, acquisitions, and general strategic and tactical advice for brokers, succession planning, the whole range of services that we provide brokers. So that's enough about that. We've had 3,500 or more client assignments in the last 34 years, and it's been an incredible ride and a real privilege to serve people in this industry because, by and large, real estate professionals, whether they're brokers or agents or teams, are just a wonderful, smart, hardworking, love life type people. So with that said, I have just some things to share. And it's basically in 3 sections. One, to share some research about housing consumers and their views about the use of real estate professionals to bust some myths, as it were. 2, the most successful tactics to get through tough, uncertain market times. And frankly, they're good tactics no matter what the market's doing. From a lifetime of having a front row seat of observing the best in this industry for now in our 44th year. And then last, talk a little bit about the recovery, housing recovery and the economic recovery. So let's jump in. So for the last 20 years, every 4 or 5 years, Real Trends hires Harris Insights, one of the country's most professional, well-known research firms, to do our own recent buyer and recent seller studies, people buying and selling homes. Let me share just some parts of what the studies have shown us. The last time we did this was about 2 years ago in 2018. It's still very valid. 90% of all housing consumers who had bought or sold a home in the prior 6 months used an agent to buy or sell a home. Now, that's a great number, especially when you consider that 20 years before, it was 81%. And 4 years before that, it was 85%. So it's important to note that in a time of more technology and more data and more blah, 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 the use of agents has gone up. And there's a myth that, of course, in an age of technology, they won't really need agents. Well, that turns out to be wrong. Another myth is that young families, millennial and Gen X buyers and sellers, well, they're smart and educated and they don't have to use agents, except 92% of them used an agent to buy or sell a home. In fact, the higher the income level and the higher the level of education, the higher the use of agents when people are buying or selling homes. People collectively, consumers in America are collectively pretty smart. And they know that using an agent is a smart thing to do, and they're essentially voting with their checkbooks to do so. We also note that 2/3 of all these consumers said they found their agent because they knew one or someone they know referred them. That's the same, it's been that way for 30 plus years. Myths about young families won't want to own homes like their parents and grandparents did, except for if you go to studies from the Realtors to the home builders to the mortgage bankers. Go to Pew Research, PEW, go to them, go to the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard. Anywhere you look, when you look at research on young people, their dream to own a home is the same as all the rest of us. Now, whether they can or not, if they're able to, it's another question. But it's clear that their desire to do so is just as high as all the prior generations. And maybe they do it later. They're getting married later. They're having children later than prior generations. Fine. But their desire to own their own home is unabated. And so we're dealing with all these myths about how we're becoming unnecessary, redundant, and too costly. But the fact is, consumers think that using an agent is smart. In fact, they think it's a smarter decision than ever before. I thought I would start there. It's the foundations of our business. Is consumers think using an agent is a good choice. People want to be homeowners. It's a good choice. People think that having a relationship with an agent is a good choice. Just a few last things from that study. First, what are the most valued services that agents provide? Well, number one, in every study we've done, was negotiating the terms and the prices of the purchase or sale of a home. Negotiating the deal was number one. Actually, and number three, funny enough, was navigating the process. Those are two very human skill sets, helping people navigate the process and helping people negotiate a transaction. Very human skill sets. A different question we ask consumers is, what is most important to you about working with an agent? Every single study we've done going back till 2000 said trust. Every single, and far and away it was trust, is the most important thing that goes on in working with an agent. They want to be able to trust their agent. So keep that in mind if you're a really good agent or you aspire to be a good agent. The most important thing to most consumers is that they develop a trusting relationship with you. And everyone that's maybe listening to this, we all know those providers of goods and services that we trust and don't trust, and we know why we got there. We know what it was about that relationship that caused there to be trust or not to be trust. So keep that in mind, those three things: negotiations, navigation of the process, and building a trusting relationship are the most important. Okay, let's talk about tactics. How do I build a successful practice, either get one going or build it stronger and better, whether the market's down or not, although this is a great time to relearn the basic habits of the most successful people in this industry. These are just two things. Number one, get close and closer to your clients and customers. Now, if you're a broker owner, get closer to your agents and staff. And this is proved both anecdotally and through research. Getting closer to people is the most important thing you can do right now. And while I am all in favor of email and social media and texting, maybe not social media, although it's an effective tool to reach people, certainly. The oldest form of technology is called the telephone. And I recommend to every one of my clients and everyone in the last 2 months who's listened in on a Zoom presentation, pick up the phone. If you're an agent, you could start by calling your family members, both close and not so close, and friends, and then clients and customers. And simply call them up to ask them how they're doing. Ask them how they are. Ask them how their family is. In a manner of speaking, I am a listing agent as a consultant when I help someone sell their company, their brokerage firm, which we do a lot of. And about 10 weeks ago, I called 50 to 75, I forget the exact number, that I reached of past clients and customers, most of whom aren't even in the business anymore, just to ask them how they were. I can promise you that the fulfillment I got back from them, at their joy, is someone taking the time to call them and just ask them to reach out and say hello and ask them how they're doing. What I got back from their feedback to me was far more rewarding than my phone call to them. Fundamentally, get close to your clients and customers, and you've heard this probably 100 times in the last 10 weeks or 2 years or 5 years. But I promise you, the best agents and teams and brokers in the country, they actually know how to connect with people. They build relationships with people, because at heart, our industry is one of relationships. So get closer to your clients and customers. Secondly, preserve capital or preserve cash. It means look at your checkbook, your QuickBooks, your Quicken, whatever spreadsheet, whatever you use, keep track of revenues and expenses, and go through that list of expenses for the last 3, 6, 12 months and make a hard decision about what you shouldn't be spending money on. It doesn't matter that we've recovered or how far we've recovered. We're probably not going to recover all the way for the rest of the year. There's too many millions of our American neighbors and friends out of work to think that will happen. Really take a close look at how you spend money for your business and deselect things that really don't add to your ability to generate clients and customers and get deals done. Just don't do it anymore, because you need to preserve capital so when a full recovery starts to come, you're in a better position. So those are the two things. Get closer to your clients and customers and preserve cash. And by the way, if you ask me 12 months from now what my recommendations would be of what to focus on, it would be those two things. Because I've noted that over all these years of my career, brokers and teams and agents that do those two things well, they're the ones who have great practices that do well regardless of what the market's doing. And I can give you all kinds of research. We've done a lot of focus group research in past years and produced white papers called People Still Matter and Against All Odds that document all of this. Just those two things. Lastly, the recovery. I touched on it a little bit. Some markets are bounced back where the written business over the last 2-3 weeks, month, is the same as it was a year ago. They're already almost all the way back. We had this enormous surge that started back in early April. We've watched it happen all over the country. But when you have 30 to 40 million unemployed fellow Americans, you can't have a complete recovery in housing sales, because these aren't all low-wage workers. These are a lot of white-collar, middle management, marketing people, technology people, retail people, airlines, tourism, just all kinds of people out of work. All kinds. And it won't recover that fast. And those people aren't in a position to buy a home right now. So we won't have a complete recovery until the general economy recovers. The other thing to note, and I don't have any facts to studies to share with you, just front row seat, observation. Every time there's been a recession, and this is my 5th recession, starting with a big one in the early 80s, the one thing we note is that the high end, top 10% of buyers and sellers in terms of price points. They tend to hibernate for 12 to 18 months after a recession. I've confirmed that's happening in New York, Chicago, Denver, and San Francisco already. It's going on right now. Their high ends have gotten very quiet. In Denver, I just got a report yesterday, under 900,000 in our market. There's 2 months supply of homes on the market. Above 1 million, there's 10.5 months of inventory, and it's growing. There's evidence that it's going to happen that way again. So we're going to have a good recovery. It didn't go down as long or as deep as we thought it was going to be, which is wonderful news for our industry, but we won't have a complete recovery. Most economists, from people like Zillow and Realtor.com and NAR, seem to indicate that maybe by the end of the year, when we close the books on 2020, the market will be off 12 to 15 or 18% in unit sales, but prices are still going up because we're still faced with the scarcity of inventory. A cross current to all this is evidence is growing that people are getting out of large urban core cities and trying to get out to the suburbs or even beyond to exurbs. This will be expedited by the reality that a lot of companies have now figured out how to have their workers work remotely from home. So now people can work further from, quote, corporate headquarters because they may not have to go into the office anymore. And that really broadens their housing choices and obviously will affect affordability. So there's a lot of great things going on in the housing market, but it's going to take another year, year and a half, maybe 2, to get us back to selling the number of homes we were 6 months ago on an annualized basis. Last, I've been asked the question a time or two about if I'm an agent or I'm a team, about the aspects of, having my own brokerage company. First of all, I have great friends who own great brokerage companies. It is not an easy business. It is not a wildly profitable business. I know some teams, 4, 5, 6 person, 12 person teams that make more money than some brokers who have 500 agents. And that's true. So it's not that brokerage is that much of a great, better business. But one thing I will always caution people, and I do consulting for firms of all kinds, all brands, all models, all sizes, all over the country. One of the first questions I ask someone is, why do you want to own a brokerage company? Is it to build equity in a business? Is it to have a tremendous income from the business? Or is it for personal satisfaction? I want to own my own business. And I would advise anyone thinking about it to ask themselves the question, why would I want to do this? Do I think I can build equity in it? Do I think I can multiply my income more than what I get as an agent or a team, for instance? Or is it because I just want the pride of owning my own brokerage company? Now, I could take 3 hours and walk you through the implications of each path you choose, but we don't have time for that here. But know that that is, bottom line, the first question you have to ask yourself. Am I doing it for equity, income, or personal satisfaction? One other thing to add, whether you are whatever one of brokerage you want to own and operate, there are 3 fundamental things to every brokerage company, almost every single model and brand, that you have to do to be successful. First, you have to know how to recruit talent. You got to get people to join, essentially join your crusade or join your dream, however you want to, or your firm, whatever you want to call your mission. You have to recruit talent. 2, you have to develop that talent. You have to build relationships and help them grow their production better than they might have someplace else. Otherwise, you might not keep them long. And 3rd, you have to do those 2 things very well while also spending less money than you have coming in. That may sound simplistic, those 3 things, but please trust me, after 34 years of consulting and 40 years of observation, You don't build a successful brokerage company unless you can recruit talent, develop the talent, and spend less money than you have coming in. So that concludes my remarks for the day. I can open this up, Debbie and Bill, to open this up to questions. And I'll try to answer them the best I can. And if I don't have an answer, I'll say I don't know.
Fantastic. Well, Debbie, I'm going to come to you for questioning first while I sort of monitor the various live streams we have going on. And I have some questions, and I'm sure there are some as well. So those of you who are watching this live, if you have specific questions you'd like for Steve to address, please go ahead and drop them in the comments, and I'll monitor that while Debbie gets us started.
Very good. Well, Steve, one question that I've heard regularly recently is, what do you think the impact on the brick and mortar real estate company is going to be with people going more towards virtual, and even maybe possibly the space that they're in or the spaces they're looking to go to?
I don't have any question at all that 2 or 3 years from now, there will be fewer smaller real estate brokerages offices in the country, period. We did a survey about it 4 weeks ago. We've had many conversations about it. It's the great thing that this has taught us is and brokers, by the way, know that brick and mortar is their second largest corporate cost after employment costs. And they've known for 20 years that most of it is wasted. They've known it's wasted. And so we know that over the next year to two, there will be a lot of real estate brokerage offices that are closed and or scaled back.
Yeah. Do you see that as closed, or do you see that as mergers and acquisitions?
I think both, but I think even good brokers who have I've got 3 clients. We've closed a third of the offices already, and we're not going to reopen them. They're gone. Yeah, we didn't lose anybody.
Yeah. So keeping the brokerages, just downsizing the amount of space and locations that they have available.
Yeah, I mean, a typical brokerage, an average brokerage of, say, having 50 agents or more in this country spends between 20 and 25% of their corporate revenue on occupancy cost.
Wow.
It's absurd.
Yeah.
And by the way, then you have related employment costs of receptionists, administrators, and managers for the office that goes along with it. And I think, I'm not saying that they'll totally go away. And by the way, there are a lot of brokers that their office culture is powerful and strong, and agents love going in, and it's a great environment. And they'll be careful. They're not going to just blow those up. But there's a lot of brokers who have a lot of offices that does not exist, and they just done.
Yeah. Well, and also being at an all-time high for the most part with number of licensed realtors versus where we were when we saw that dip back in 2009 through about 2011.
Yep.
You anticipate seeing that same drop with the markets bouncing back, or do you anticipate that number to continue to grow?
No, I have a lot of clients who are the men and women, obviously big brokerage clients and all kinds of brokerage clients, but I also have clients who are the men and women who run a lot of state association realtors and local association realtors. And we have Zoom calls. We've had dozens of them the last 2.5 months. Nobody really thinks this will be a huge dip. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's 2 or 3 percentage points drop in realtor membership. Because the other thing we know is a lot of people, when they get laid off from their jobs, one of the things they do is they go get their real estate license. Yep. Because all you professionals listening in, you make it look so easy that everybody thinks they can just come in and like hang out and talk to their friends and they'll get a lot of business done. And, we know better inside the industry, but to the outside world, it looks, simple. Well, it's not. How's that?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was earlier in my career working, bringing in, I call it rescuing versus recruiting agents. When I was rescuing agents from other companies, I would say that I think the most common thing I heard about getting into the real estate profession was that it's flexible and allows me to make a lot of money. So
yeah, everybody loves it. I have my own schedule. Yeah. So that means you can be flexible with the 60 hours you're going to spend every week trying to build a practice.
That's right.
We've done a lot of research with agents and teams, And that's the funniest thing. They go, yeah, I mean, you do this and do this and do this, and then you work 60 to 70 hours a week and it'll all be fine. Yeah.
What do you think about the commercial industry?
I'm glad I sold the office building I'm sitting in.
Amen.
Yeah.
I mean, and retail malls. I mean, I'll tell you, there's going to be real problems in the commercial market. And I've been reading a lot of articles about it. I mean, they've done the same thing to commercial mortgages they did 15 years ago in the residential. They got them sliced and diced into collateralized mortgage obligations and all kinds of games going on back there. And they're going to have a heck of a time because the bonds backing those commercial mortgages are trading at 52 cents on the dollar now. I mean, that's your biggest indication. They know there's going to be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Some bond funds are, yeah. So, and I have friends who work for some major urban brokerages, New York City, Chicago, San Francisco. I mean, really? How many? Like one client, their main offices are on the 30th floor. They have to get to their floor. They wait in an elevator line 40 minutes because the elevator can only take 2 or 3 people at a time. And that's not going to go away like in 4 months. Mm-hmm. It may be a year and a half, 2 years for people to feel comfortable about being in an elevator with a bunch of people.
Right.
So there's a lot of implications for what's happened that we can look in the aggregate, but we don't know how it's all going to turn out. I really don't.
Yeah. So if you're a commercial owner, maybe go ahead and get that property on the market, just like if you're a seller and want to sell high.
It may be too late.
Yeah.
Maybe too late. It's, I mean, this is just a 2-story. You can climb stairs here.
Right.
But even now there's, this is only 12,000 square feet there. I haven't seen a third of the tenants in 3 months in here. Yeah. They're gone. And I don't know how many are going to come back.
Right.
Just let the lease run out and just bag it.
Yeah. Well, before I turn it to you, Bill, I just want to give kudos to social media. I know not your favorite friend. At the same time, it enabled me to connect with you, and I'll keep the telephone number private, but I'm appreciative of the opportunity. And for those of you who are taking in a lot of this information, just wanted to reiterate the realtrends.com website. Great publications in that, to the publications tab, great information. I subscribe to the monthly newsletter and have seen your video series and all of the things that go along with that, but also on LinkedIn. You have a great presence on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
Information being publicized out to people. So follow them on LinkedIn also. All right, Bill, more questions.
Oh, perfect. So a couple of interconnected questions, Steve, from our thread here. So I'll ask them both back to back, and you can sort of address it however you'd like to. First question from Zach. Thank you, Zach. How would you advise a small or medium-sized brokerage link up with a national brand, or would you? And then connected to that, do you think there's value in being with a national franchise? So this is an agent team question. Do you think there's value in being with a national franchise, and does today's buyer or seller care about those things?
So there is value in some of the brands. There clearly is. When we did a study, I think I may have mentioned it. We did a study of 400 top teams were in our study group. It's been about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years now. And we asked top teams around the US, what did a brokerage do that was valuable for them? And it was interesting. The number one thing was legal and regulatory guidance. Number two was a good local, a well-known local or national brand was very important to them. Now, one of the backdrops of that is, in fact, right now I'm working to do the final proofing on 14,000 plus submissions to our annual team and agent rankings that we do at Real Trends with the Wall Street Journal. We have a surprise new announcement coming up in a week or so about another big publication is going to be sponsoring this. The preponderance of top agents, individuals and teams, work for a national brand. Whether it's Coldwell Banker, Sotheby's, Century 21, ERA, Exit, I could keep going, Compass, the great majority, or Long and Foster, or Intercoastal, or a good local name. I mean, 90+% of the top 14,000 teams and individuals in the country work for a well-known brand name company. They can't all be idiots. They can't be. So they choose to affiliate with those kind of companies, and they pay what they need. And Keller Williams, I shouldn't leave them out, or Better Homes and Gardens, ERA. I don't want anybody to be insulted. They're all represented, well represented rankings. But you look at, okay, then what percentage of those 14,000 plus are with a small, unknown local broker? And the numbers like this. I mean, that's kind of prima facie evidence that they see value, because they could go do their own thing, but they don't. They choose to be associated with a firm that's branded. And now, if I'm a small brokerage, different question. If I'm a small brokerage, would I affiliate? It depends. It depends. What kind of brokerage am I trying to build? What am I trying to build? You saw me earlier talk about the 3 big questions you need to answer. I just talked to a young man yesterday. He's built his own brokerage company, and they're serving, they like 95% of their business is focused on the military families. And they're in a large military metropolitan area. And they intently focus everything on the military community. He doesn't necessarily need a national brand. He doesn't. No, but if I want to build a large market share leading firm, a national brand, and their referral networks within their brand, and their access to some technology they can provide, it might make a good decision to do that. So it really starts first. What kind of brokerage company you want to build? Yep.
Great point. Debbie, back to you while I look for some more questions from the group, please.
Sure. I know firsthand, just from hearing you and attending your events, that you deal, and what you shared earlier, you deal a lot with mergers and acquisitions. And I know over the years, I've attended Gathering of Eagles several times, and we've seen that price for purchase of a smaller brokerage increase. And then I know when we were there last year, it had somewhat leveled off and maybe was looking at a decline in the cost. So if we had someone that was looking to be acquired, what would be those things that would be valuable to a larger company to come in and purchase them? And then are you still seeing an increase in big companies coming in and purchasing smaller companies?
First of all, the market went quiet for 6 weeks between mid-March and the end of April, but we're now up to full capacity again. We are getting 5 to 8 requests a week for valuation and M&A assistance, and we're seeing the gamut of companies. The prices haven't declined a lot. The terms, how it's paid for, have gotten softer, more in favor of the purchaser than it used to be. That is, we're seeing a little less cash down and a little more time to pay the balance on transactions. But, as I try to tell people, we published a white paper, and you can go to our website and get it. It's called Valuing Small to Medium-Sized Brokers. It lays it all out. Pardon me, my phone is buzzing at me a little bit.
It's another valuation request coming in.
So they can go to realtrends.com, go to, I think it's publications, or go to consulting, and you'll see Valuing Small to Medium-Sized Brokers. It lays it all out very I wrote it so a normal layperson can understand it. There are several factors that you take into consideration if you have a small to medium-sized firm that you're thinking of selling. It will help you understand where your value is, and actually gives you the steps to how to improve value. But there's a lot of large firms that are interested in combining smaller firms.
That's what I was curious in, is that
Oh,
if
yeah.
you're still seeing those large firms seeking out the acquisition.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a belief, of course, this will be a great time because, there are small company brokerage owners who may say, oh, geez, I don't want to live in this kind of world, owning my own firm. I'm tired of doing it myself. We have a lot of small brokerages. I mean, a lot, thousands. And hopefully I'm not insulting anybody who's listening to this or hears this, but there's far too many small brokerage companies, and they have 10 to 30 to 40 agents, but they're still listing and selling to make a living. That's probably not smart. You can make more money if you're just listing and selling. But if you want to make money in the brokerage, you got to stop listing and selling and start using that time to actually build your brokerage. And we have a lot of clients we're helping through make the decision. Either you want to transition to be a business operator, or you really ought to not have your brokerage.
Yeah, you can definitely build a team cheaper, grow a team cheaper and work your way out of a team than you can.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I have one more question, Bill, if
Sure.
you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
When you think of the real estate market, we'll call it 3 years from now, you hear a lot about simplifying the process and that sort of thing. What are some key things or best practices that some of the agents could start to incorporate today to make themselves more simplified tomorrow? Or what are you seeing as what will be 3 years down the road?
I think, look, one of the things this has all taught us is that we can use technologies to stay connected and do our business without having to do it in person, without having to go to an office. So the first thing you have to say is 3 years from now, for anybody listening who's still using paper forms, stop it. Okay, stop it. It's like that old Bob Newhart. Did you ever see that Bob Newhart when he was a psychologist called Stop It? Funny as go get out. Stop it. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, stop it. I think what's about to happen is we're finally going to see the backside of all this knitted together. Transaction management, title, escrow, mortgage. And I was at a Zoom meeting yesterday with one of the largest, best real estate software companies in the US. And I look at how this is all now starting to be knit together. You're going to have to know how those networks, how they work. You don't have to actually do anything. You just have to know how they, how to tell your mortgage loan officer they got to plug into the network if they're not already plugged in. And if you have a favorite property casualty insurer, how do you plug them in? How do you do that? You're going to see everything from a company like Utility Concierge, a new company that it handles all the utility connections for a homeowner. It's all going to be on the platform. So an agent will be able to go, okay, I'm going to use Updater for that and Utility Concierge for that. And I'm going to link this all into my consumer-friendly platform and then tell my customer it's all done for you. You'll get alerts to let you know when something's happened, if you want them, or I'll keep you posted, whichever you prefer. It's going to become a much more connected process, but I would tell every agent listening that does not mean you're out of business. It means all the crud that goes on in the background is going to be automated onto simplified platforms. Finally. I mean, that's been our dream for 25 years. It's finally happening, which, by the way, makes the importance of the agent get higher. get higher. The value of the agent goes up because consumers, they think they can navigate those platforms. Not so easy.
Yeah, the consumer doesn't even know about the platform, and that's the key. That's the value of the agent, to be able to send this click here, here.
Yeah, 6-8 years ago, we had a company come out. We have this whole platform, and you're a buyer. You can come on, and there's all the MLS stuff, and you can submit offers, and you can do all this, and you can select it. You can do all this stuff, and it only costs you $350 fee. And buyers went, well, doesn't the agent who works for me take care of all that stuff for nothing? And the whole thing failed. Just failed. Doesn't mean, look, there's do-it-yourselfers, and they'll make, if this happens, they'll make it easier. But look, if it were about information and the process, we'd all been out of business years ago.
Right. Yeah.
Look, when listings were available and buy and sale information and all that became available, and our usage has gone up.
It's interpreting the data too. I think it's there's a disconnect in the interpretation from the public to the agent.
Yeah.
So you're talking about technology. I was watching something yesterday, and they were talking. A company was on there called Earnest. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's
sure.
Venmo and PayPal for the earnest money deposit because nobody has it anymore. So I thought, well, that's an idea right there, you know. And so
isn't that cool? Yeah, and I'm talking next week to a new company that can virtually stage a house for virtual tours.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. You don't have to do it actually, you do it virtually. They make your house look like $1 million. So that's what people see if they see it online. Right now that I go, well, there's still what? And then they go see the real thing? No, because what it allows the customer to do is they can take pictures of their own stuff and put it into the virtual staging and see how their stuff would look.
I've seen that with flooring where you can take a picture of your room and then raise the flooring.
Yeah.
I actually just did that in my rentals.
Yeah. It's good. We're going to start to see some really cool, fun stuff in terms of being able to play around with that stuff. But you know, most people still want a human being standing beside them saying, nah, I wouldn't go to that neighborhood. I go to this neighborhood.
Yeah. All right, Bill, any other questions from you?
Yeah, one more before we wrap up, please, Steve. Opportunities and threats. So let's say over the next 6 to 12 months, what do you see as the biggest opportunity or opportunities in the industry? And then I guess same question, flip the coin over. What do you see as the biggest threats?
So over the last couple of years, 2 years or so, people had always asked me, what could happen to knock this housing market off its rails? And my answer would be there's two things that could really harm the housing market. And I first one I said, strangely enough, was a 9/11 event. Something we just don't see coming. And okay, we just had that. Right. And the second is the fall elections, 2020 elections. If there is a wholesale change in administration, we already know, based on the proposals of those who are not in power of the White House and the Senate, that they will bring a regulatory regime, that is a whole series of regulations into our economy that will suffocate it. We already know that because we had the 8 years from 08 to 16 where average growth, economic GDP growth, was less than 2% a year. And now we've had 3 years of 2.5% to 3.5% growth. And we get the housing market and we get people wanting to own, and we get a lot, and lowest unemployment rate in history. And people just seem to, you know, when this kind of thing happens. So, you know, and I mean, I think people ought to understand I mean, you can look at the kind of regulatory regime I'm talking about when you look at how the governors of Michigan and Pennsylvania responded to COVID versus the governors of South Carolina, North Carolina, Texas, Georgia, Colorado. I mean, they shut them down. Agents are unessential. Didn't give a reason why, just said they're unessential. And they basically cratered them. They cratered them for, in the case of Michigan, about 6 weeks. In the case of Pennsylvania, about 2 months. Basically cut off those people's ability to have any living at all. And imagine that you now have a federal government that is controlled by people that think the answer is regulations of those kind, where they start regulating all kinds of business and consumer behavior. Generally speaking, you have a lower growth, lower expectation type of economy. So I tell all people I know, I said, well, I'm not getting into the politics of it and argue specific points. It's a fact. You listen to what one party says about what they would do and listen to the other party for our business. I'm not talking about benefits of either party's planks in other areas, just for our business.
Sure. So what do you see as the biggest opportunity then over the next 6 to 12 months for our industry?
The greatest opportunity for any agent listening in is there's nothing stopping you from deciding to grow your business other than you.
Love it.
I mean, you know what? We've had people trying to compete with us for years. We've been here 34 years now. There are a lot of reasons why people thought. I had one CEO said, you're an unnecessary organization. Yeah, well, you know, as I told the team, I said, well, are we or aren't we? And we're still here. And that's 10 years later. And we've survived. This is our 4th recession. And we'll get through this one. We actually doing more business for more clients and customers and have more readers than in any time in our history with 1/3 less employees. We had to figure out how to do this. And I tell all agents and teams, you know what? Nobody says you have to be the biggest. Nobody says you should keep always wanting to get bigger and bigger and bigger just to get bigger. But if you want to get stronger and smarter and wiser, I have friends that have gotten really good at it, so good that they're actually working less and making more.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Debbie, any parting thoughts from your end before we hand it to Steve for one last word of wisdom?
Yeah, I would say if you're interested in hearing more from Steve and learning more about Gathering of Eagles, check out their website. Also check out the Gathering of Eagles event that has now been moved to November. Fingers crossed that all of that still takes place. Just thank you so much for being here and giving us your time. We truly appreciate it.
It's been an honor, and everybody just needs to remember we are still an industry based on relationships. Technology has not changed that. And it may have even heightened the focus of how important they really are. So you know what? Remember that there's people in trouble out there emotionally, financially, and this is a great opportunity to reach out to the people you know and express your care and concern from them. And don't be surprised if you're the first person that actually called somebody. Right. So with that, thank you for having me both. I hope this was helpful.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate your time. Great having you. Thanks, everybody.